We have learned a lot of lessons in the last few years as progressives in the progressive movement. We've learned how incredible it is when we see progressives win and what it takes to win. But we also have seen a lot from the losses and learned a lot of lessons from what happens when there's a narrow loss, or when endorsements don't come in early enough, or how a campaign should be structured, and how, progressive campaigns, working class campaigns, are very different than the establishment campaigns, and the entire methodology is different. So I'm excited because I'm part of this organization, as you know, called Matriarch, and Amy Vilela is one of our Matriarch candidates. Matriarch is hosting a training on January 29th. January 29th, a full day training for working class women who are thinking of running for office in 2022, or who are running for office in 2022. And spoiler alert, if you are interested in a Matriarch endorsement, we urge you to go to this training. And part of the reason is, if we can scroll down a little bit, you can have the training information up there. Part of the reason is that there are so many lessons to be learned over the past few years that we are ready to present and make sure that everybody's race gets off on the right foot, that everything, that folks are able to become viable earlier, that candidates can go on to get major endorsements. This is a big deal. It's on January 29th. It's a full day. But most importantly, we want to have as many women come to this training as possible, as many as possible, and their staff. And what will that take? Well, we want to make sure that this training is free. A lot of trainings are not free. A lot of trainings you have to fly or drive or caravan with folks and share hotel rooms, and, comes out of your campaign funds or your personal funds. We're doing this digitally. We're bringing in some of the most incredible folks who have experience in the progressive movement, from big lawyers to major organizers. We just found out that Cori Bush's campaign manager is going to do a training. Cynthia Nixon's going to speak, and she's going to talk about her personal experience running for office against Andrew Cuomo. It's going to be an incredible training. And out of that, there's a sisterhood. And of course, folks who are part of that sisterhood on the campaign teams. But we need to raise $30,000 to make this work. So very, very, very important. If you can contribute, whatever you can contribute today, it'll help us make sure that these tickets are free. The costs are there, and that's what it's paying. We're paying for the costs of the training. That is it. These platforms aren't cheap anymore, unfortunately. Promoting the training requires a little bit of money. And of course, just making sure that the training is available to as many candidates as possible. It's going to cost $30,000, and whatever you can contribute will help us get there. So we have the link on screen, bit.ly/trainwomen, if you can. And if you'd like to sign up for the training as well, you can go to matriarchpac.com and sign up. And if you know somebody who's amazing and wants to run for office, or you can nominate them right now for the endorsement. Speaking of incredible women, one that has been endorsed by Matriarch, we have Amy Vilela. She is one of the founding members of Matriarch. Look at that background. Amy, you look amazing. Man, the lighting, the background, everything. Amy Vilela is, of course, running for Congress in Nevada. It's early in the morning there, Amy. It's Nevada's first district, although there's redistricting. So I guess before we get started, tell me what's going on with the district right now, because a lot of folks are very confused about the state of redistricting across the country, and you are on top of it.
Yeah, so we did have redistricting in Nevada. They did change the district I'm running in. Unfortunately, they did break up a lot of communities and also decrease the representation for the Latinx community in Nevada. But we do have a district that is diverse as Nevada is. And we do have a really strong pathway of victory going forward. And we feel that this race is definitely winnable, and we're hitting the ground already and knocking doors and looking forward to taking this all the way to Washington. I will tell you that it has changed quite a bit. Half the district now is new to this district, so it loses some of the incumbent, advantage in this district. But we do still have a lot of work to reach these people and to let them know about the policies and platform that we're running on that will make a real change in the everyday person's life.
So, Amy, before we get to your actual race and some of the issues you're running on, I just want to say, okay, Amy is one of the most extraordinary women I know on this planet. No, I mean, I say this in all honesty, because, some people run and they lose, and then they go right back to what they were doing before, because they have to survive. And Amy, you have a family, your husband's in the military, so there's a lot happening there. But you have decided to dedicate your work and your experience in the financial sector as a CFO, into supporting progressive movements and causes and candidates. And it's not easy. And you've really been able to help that infrastructure building that didn't really exist, prior to Bernie, at least in a more in a robust way. You've helped so many candidates get through some of the most complicated things that a candidate has to go through, and they're not aware of, because when they say, "Oh, go run for office," nobody says, "Well, you got to like have an accountant, and you have to raise money, and all this stuff is really hard, and the laws are really complicated, and they're all designed to prohibit working people from being in office." And
Right.
I'm really impressed, because it's not just that you're committed to this, but you're always available for consultation, and you've supported so many other candidates pro bono. Like at Matriarch, you always give support to our candidates, and I think that means a lot. So why did you do that after you ran the first time?
I tell my daughter's story often, and the one part where I always talk about, as my daughter was dying in my arms, the old Amy died with her. I knew at that moment, I didn't know what was ahead of me. I couldn't have foretold what I was going to be entering into or the journey I was about to take. But I knew that I had seen evil, I had seen injustice, and there was no way that I could go back to just going back to being a CFO, being in a cushiony, executive job. And when I started really understanding the intersectionality of money in politics and corporate money in politics, and understanding how this played a part in the death of my daughter, and not just even her death, but the suffering on a mass scale in this country, I knew I had to do something. So after I ran in 2018, after that race, I knew that there was things that were needed in the infrastructure for progressives to be able to win. And so I was going to use my talents to be able to help other progressives get into office. And so I started doing consultancy with compliance, which is as sexy as that is. It is so necessary. And so I've been doing compliance work for many progressives, and making sure that we can get them into office, and that they have the necessary backing and at an affordable price. Because again, as progressives, we're not taking corporate money. So we have to make sure that we're able to give those services at an affordable rate. So that's really what got me started in going in and making sure that I support other women and people of color, and making sure that we are having an infrastructure that helps progressives get over the finish line.
You ran in 2018. Many people have heard your story, but if you're comfortable, would you share again with the audience, maybe who didn't know in 2018 that you ran, or what you ran on, but what inspired you to run in 2018?
So, my 22-year-old daughter, Shalyn, was a wonderful, wonderful daughter. She was funny and energetic and had many dreams. She was in school to become a nurse, and she decided to move back home in 2015, back to Las Vegas, to complete her schooling. When she arrived from the 22-hour drive, her leg was swollen and red, and she was telling me how much it hurt. Initially, we thought she had just, needed to stretch it out and move around, but it kept getting increasingly painful. And, I was on the way out of town for a business meeting, and I got a call from her, and she was telling me that it was just too painful. She needed to go be seen. So she went to a local ER. And once she arrived at the ER, they kept asking her for her insurance immediately. And Shalyn replied that she did not have insurance. And so I got a phone call. They were asking me to call my insurance company and her insurance company. And I was like, listen, we'll take care of this when I get back. We'll take care of the bill. It's not a big deal. Just be seen, get the care you need. We can deal with this later. I get another call from her, and she's telling me, crying, "Mommy, they're not helping me." My daughter was Black with sickle cell trait. She had an injured knee. that she had been seen for, but it was healing. And she had just driven 22 hours and was on birth control. These are all risk factors and the symptoms she displayed of a blood clot. And they told her when she asked for more screenings, they told her to go get insurance and see a specialist. They were not a doctor's office.
Wow.
She did that. She went in and applied for insurance. She was looking for places. I have text messages from her from specialists trying to get in to be seen. But because we did not know it was a blood clot, we did not know there was a risk of her flying. And she took a flight back to Kansas City to finalize paperwork for schooling. And I had to do what no parent should have to do. I remember walking in that emergency room after I got off the flight and seeing my daughter sitting there overbreathing her ventilator. And I knew when I saw her that we probably weren't going to get her back. And, I held her as she took her last breath. And, no parent should have to do that. And we're talking about all it would take to diagnose what was wrong with Shalyn was a bedside ultrasound.
Yeah.
That is the extent of level of effort it would have taken was a bedside ultrasound, a little machine with a little probe that goes over your leg, and she would have had a prescription. By the time that she was out in Kansas City and dying, the blood clot went from her ankle all the way up to her groin.
Oh my God.
And, when we talk about, healthcare as a human right, I don't want to hear about access. I don't want to hear about affordability because everyone's level of access or their ability to pay is different. Healthcare is a human right, plain and simple. And if you're not for Medicare for all, then don't let those words come out of your mouth.
Right. So you, this awakened you in ways politically, at least, that you channeled your mourning and your anger and your frustration and looked at the system and you decided to run.
Well, and before I decided to run, there was a point when they were telling me, Amy, you should run. I was like, what? How can someone like me from my background actually have what it takes to run for office, right? Who's going to listen to someone who's been a single mother, who's been divorced, who's been in poverty, who's been homeless? Like, what seat do I have at this table? And there's so many people that feel that way. But you know what? That's exactly what we need in Congress. We need people with those lived experiences in Congress that aren't going to settle for just what's status quo. We don't need any more centrists in there who are just as comfortable and just willing to go along with it. We need fighters. People are going to go and work around the clock for the policies that we need so desperately, and use everything at their disposal in order to advance those in Congress, because it takes a lot just to get it to the floor, let alone to get it to pass.
Exactly. You, speaking of your, folks may remember you from the movie Knock Down the House. You were one of the campaigns that was profiled in the Netflix documentary, along with, of course, Congresswoman Cori Bush and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Paula Jean Swearingen, who's running for Senate in against Joe Manchin, that guy. So I don't like to have his words in his name in my mouth anymore. I'm like done with him.
Spoken.
Who knew how prophetic that documentary would be in so many ways? Because not only did AOC win the next cycle, Cori, who of course you're very good friends with, has won, and she's really gone into Congress and shifted. Immediately shifted the focus and has been able to get the Biden administration to move on housing by staging a protest, an occupation of the Capitol steps, which was a brilliant move to relay the information and urge fellow lawmakers to do so. She, of course, immediately when she got into Congress, the January 6th events occurred, and she pushed back in a way that I was really blown away by how little other congressional members, including Republicans who were at risk, didn't push back against these terrorists in Congress. So, she's a very good friend of yours. You got to know each other very well on your first campaigns, and of course, you stay in touch. Has there been any advice that Congresswoman Bush has given you for this time around, because she's also run many times. I mean, people don't understand the average time it takes for a woman to run and win is 3 times. I would bet it's actually more for a working class woman, because that's like the old institutional standards, the standards of the establishment candidates.
Right.
So this is your second run, which congratulations, because like you're not, they try to scare you off. I mean, they do this to all these candidates. They try to scare folks off. They have all these weapons in their toolkit. What kind of advice has Congresswoman Bush given you about this time, for this campaign?
Oh man, there's a lot of advice.
Stuff that you could say out loud.
Yeah. So, I think the number one thing that we've talked about a lot is keeping focus. We have to ignore the noise that's going to be around. You can't win. There's no chance that she can win. All the infighting and the people coming at you and the constant criticisms and all of those things is to keep focused on the end goal, right? She actually told me to run like I have a nosebleed.
Oh, wow.
When you have a nosebleed, you're putting your head back and you're putting your fingers on your nose and you're just looking for that door to that bathroom, right? Mm-hmm. You don't see anything else going on around you. You are just on point, going straight for that bathroom door. And that's what she said. You have to run with that intention. And yeah, I saw that with her race as well. I mean, we're talking up till July, everyone's saying you can't win, 20 points behind. But, it's that intention and that whole entire drive that we have, especially people who have a why, like Corey, like myself, like others, that is that lived experience that why you need to be in office. What is at stake. I know what is at stake. I know that people's lives literally are at stake if we don't get more fighters into office. If we don't get more progressives into office to continue to push that agenda and to push the centrists to continue to go to the left and towards policies that really will bring change to the working class Americans, then we are really putting people's lives at risk. People suffering, people having to decide, not having housing. We have an entire immigrant community who is right now waiting on pins and needles to try to find a way for a pathway to citizenship. We have people who are, afraid to go out. They're afraid for their children because of the racism that exists and the police brutality. There are so many things that we have to address, and we need people who are going to be bold in Congress to actually go and push for that agenda. And we can see how successful progressives have been at pushing for the legislation, even where we're at right now, and pushing to get the legislation that we've gotten so far.
I'm looking at your site. First off, the site is beautiful. If I can share that, it's very, it's hard when you're putting a platform together. It's a lot of reading, but the way that you guys have just, it's visually very great. But I mean, the issues, as you're seeing here, are the issues that most Americans are facing on a day-to-day basis. And I want to know a little bit more about the race itself. Who are you running against? What does this member represent? And can you frame that kind of in relationship with the changes that have happened in Nevada in the last few years, especially since Harry Reid, of course, left the Senate, and how he impacted all of Nevada politics, because he was notorious for that.
Yeah. So my opponent is Dina Titus. She's been in office for about a decade. She has been a very complacent politician. She's been comfortable. Mm-hmm. She differs from me in that I am supporting things like a Green New Deal. I am supporting progressive policies. She's not a member of the Progressive Caucus. I am supporting the bold legislation. She's been in office for that long, but yet she's only passed one bill.
Whoa.
So we have someone that has been in office, but has been, pretty much going along with the status quo. And there is a real enthusiasm gap in this district. When it was the strongest D district in Nevada, it had the lowest Democratic turnout, time after time after time, even lower than our Republican seat. And so this seat right now, we're at a real risk of her losing in this district right now because of that enthusiasm gap. Mm-hmm. And because there's no motivation and engagement within the community to get the votes out. People really need a reason to vote. Right. And we've seen, Nevada has gone progressively more progressive since my race. We saw with the landslide victory for Bernie Sanders in 2020. I was serving as his Nevada state co-chair. We saw that landslide victory, and we knew that this tides are changing in Nevada. And then after that, we saw that the party was taken over by a progressive slate. People are ready for this change in Nevada. And so we have to be going out and reaching out to the community and making sure they know there is a reason to vote. They want someone who's going to be actively fighting for these issues and willing to be bold in Congress.
Healthcare is such a big part of your platform and your personal story. And of course, it was a central piece of Bernie Sanders' campaign and the national nurses. And then you were major advocates and organizers across the country, making sure it was front and center because, there are many unions that do not support Medicare for all. I don't think that many of the union members agree, but, there's always some political stuff that's happening, negotiation. How do you see, when you get into Congress, what is the pathway to Medicare for all? Because some folks think you could just go in there and just force it. But that could eventually stall it by pushing. I mean, you have to be very strategic. The outsiders have to push and do what they can with respect, obviously, not try with character assassination. But
for activism, yes, 100%.
Yes. But on the inside, if you're elected, what is the pathway? How do you get to that point?
I've been organizing for Medicare for all for years now. I've held so many rallies, I can't even remember how many. I have done it not only in the state of Nevada, but across the country. Right. I successfully, lobbied to Nevadan congressional members to support Medicare for all. So I am definitely in this fight. I mean, but it comes again, knowing that lived experience is what we need in Congress. I'm going to fight for Medicare for all like I have fought for my daughter. That passion, there will be no one, I can guarantee it, no one as passionate about me as Medicare for all as I am in Congress. And we can see how, like with Cori Bush, she has really brought to the front housing and racial justice, right? This is the passion and the drive that she has, and she is constantly talking about it. And everything that she's doing, she's constantly messaging, she's talking, she's pushing, she's out in the community, she's doing interviews, she's in the newspaper, right? We need that same kind of passion from all of us, we all have different things that we excel in, right? We need a Medicare for all advocate who's in there, who is going to have that kind of passion around the clock. I will never stop talking about the need for health care justice and to need for getting Medicare for all and driving for that. And that's what we're going to need. We're going to need to keep on bringing national attention and pressure constantly. And we need to have someone who's going to help also organize nationwide. That's the piece that's missing. We have to organize and keep pushing nationwide in every district. It's not just with people who are in Congress. We need this. We need organizing outside as well in every district, right? Going there, having rallies, getting out there, going and telling them this is what we are demanding. That is where we need to get the drive for Medicare for all to get to, so that we can get this to where we have the power then to go in and push for it in Congress. We also need more members in Congress to join the progressives. That's something that, we cannot talk about passing and pushing on these unless we have more power. And all of us have different personalities. So, all of us are going to go in there at a different angle. We need to be able to join them together to make sure that we are pushing as a unit to get this to pass.
And it's interesting you say that, because this is organizing principle is always about coalition building. It is not about beating each other up for not doing something the right way. It's about how do we expand the coalition, even with folks that we may not agree with on all issues, but we need the votes. We need the votes. So, there are levers that you can, in machinations, obviously in Congress, that sometimes, it might come with a greater deal of something else, or a compromise. But if you want the votes to get it passed in Congress, and of course in the Senate, because there are all these co-sponsors in the Senate who supposedly believe in Medicare for all, but when it gets to the Senate, that's when you're going to need the pressure, the outside pressure, even more so. Amy, I'm so encouraged by your campaign. This is like one of the major hopes for next year is getting you elected. And for folks who want to support, volunteer, donate, of course, contributions it's a big part of the show today because I don't think people understand it is not as easy to raise money this time as it was last time.
No.
You know, you don't have the presidential stuff is not on the horizon. You don't have the same mechanisms in place. There have been a lot of crackdowns with technology. I don't know if people really are aware. It's harder to get the word out. There's fatigue. So if you care about these issues, if you really want Congress to move, now is the time to contribute whatever you have. I know the economy has been tough and it's the holidays, but these are the moments that matter. And Amy has a pathway to victory. She's an extraordinarily viable candidate. She has a lot of energy. She has the experience. And obviously, she's just like an amazing person, as you're seeing. So please, please contribute. But what else can folks do? What are you asking for right now?
Well, right now is not the time to tire. They want us to get tired. They want us to infight. They want us to argue about everything. They want to destroy this movement. We cannot tire out. Listen, I know everybody, feels in a moment that, it's just we're fighting this again. But listen, this isn't the time to tire out. This campaign is definitely winnable. It's a very important campaign. We need to have that support in Washington, D.C. And really, the most important thing people can do right now is donate to the campaign. Early money in a campaign actually helps the momentum drive it to the end. And we've got a lot of ground to cover. We've already been knocking hundreds and hundreds of doors, but we've got to increase that coverage on the ground. We've got to be able to go out there and meet people where they're at. We've got to be able to get out, our pamphlets and make sure that people are getting there. And this takes money. Yeah. So definitely, if you're able to, please donate to our campaign. Help us join the team, man. We're ready to take this on. We're ready to take this to Washington, D.C. We just need to have the support of the community, and it's so important. Please, donate. You can go to amyvilela.org. We could really use the support. We definitely, have a very strong campaign, and we're ready to take this, like I said, to D.C.
And this is a union heavy town. It's obviously Vegas. It's an amazing town to organize in. A lot of diversity, as you said, not as much as last time because they've gerrymandered it. But with that being said, there's an incredible opportunity here to make the case for working people through Amy Vilela's campaign. So we're so excited. When's the primary?
So it's in June. And so we still have a good amount of time to get out there. And definitely, if you ever want to come out, to Vegas, a good reason to come out would be to knock some doors with us.
Oh, I'm there. I'm going to do it. Next year, right? Primary season, we're going on tour. It is going to be. I haven't dropped this on everybody yet, but because we have so many incredible candidates for matriarch, we will have so many incredible candidates. I am ready to hit the road, get in a van, do the show on the road, and make the case because now is, like you said, now is not the time to tire. So
no, it's not.
Amy, best of luck. Go hit the phones. We're taking up too much of your time. Time is the most important resource in a campaign. It's the first thing you learn in campaign school. I've already given a little bit out to the public. What is the most important resource? The candidate's time. Go hit the phones. Or else I'm going to get yelled at by your staff. Take care, Amy.